This bill proposes to introduce mandatory voting for the Nigerians of voting age in general elections, both on the national and the state levels. Nigeria has consistently recorded alarming low voter turnout rates in elections. For instance, in the 2023 general election, less than 30% of the registered voters participated. For global precedents, several democracies, including Australia, Belgium, and Brazil, for instance, have adopted mandatory voting.
But I will add, at the same time, Mr. Speaker, I'm of the view that people must participate. We have to compulsorily make people to vote. In fact, we have to even add to reprimand those ones that are intentionally absconding from voting.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, just when you thought you had seen an editor, then comes this from this tone-deaf APC government.
My respected colleagues, the essence of democracy is participation, and it is very core. Democracy thrives when citizens are actively engaged in the process of selecting their leaders and shaping the direction of governance. Voting is not only the right, but a civic responsibility. And in many democracies across the world, it is treated as such. This bill proposes to introduce mandatory voting for the Nigerians of voting age in general elections, both on the national and the state levels. Permit me to highlight the reasons this amendment is both necessary and timely. Low voters turnout. Nigeria has consistently recorded alarming low voters turnout rates in elections. For instance, in the 2023 general election, less than 30% of the registered voters participated. This trend undermines legitimacy of election, governments, and weakened democratic institutions. Strengthening civic engagements. By making voting a legal obligation, we will instill in the citizens a sense of civic duty and shared responsibility in the governance process. For global precedents, several democracies, including Australia, Belgium, and Brazil, for instance, have adopted mandatory voting for the positive outcomes in terms of political participation and public accountability. Combating electoral apathy and inducement. Mandatory voting can significantly reduce the influence of vote buying, as more citizens will be participating. Enhancing representation. When more people vote, the outcome of election are more likely to reflect the true will of the people, leading more into exclusive governance. The rationale for this bill rests on the urgent need to revitalize the participation in Nigeria. The persistent trend of low turnout undermines the legitimacy of our electoral process and weakens the foundations of representative governance. By making voting mandatory, we aim to foster a stronger culture of civic responsibility, reduce electoral apathy, and increase the inclusiveness of fairness of our elections.
Nigerians are quick to condemn various administrations, but they are not so quick to fulfill their civic responsibility. In other climes that we have traveled to or lived, personally in Australia, it is actually an offense for you not to vote during elections. And the tax office will visit you and find out why you did not vote. And there are some incentives as a citizen that you'll be denied because you refuse to fulfill your responsibility.
Thankfully, the House of Reps still have a few clear-minded individuals.
What will be the mode of enforcement? It is not just good enough that we have it in our books that voting is compulsory. How will it be enforced? My big brother, the Deputy Speaker, has referenced Australia. That certain incentives could be given. What are the incentives in our climes? What are those things that citizens even enjoy? Is it that you'll be denied security? There is no water anywhere, as to say you'll be denied your basic utilities. What exactly will be denied any man who has refused to vote in Nigeria? I don't think there's anything that can be denied any man that has refused to vote. Voting should be free. Even here in Parliament, can we in all honesty tell ourselves that our voter register is clean? In some constituencies, you find Mike Tyson, who is not a citizen of that place, still on the register till today. When we talk about 30% of voters, 30% of what? The voter register is not clean in anywhere. There's no constituency that you say, this register, yes, there are human beings complete on this. So if we begin to use that as a yardstick to say our participation is low, I think we have questions to answer in that regard. There are people who registered in this country. There are people who registered in this country and they're in Ghana, they're in the US, they're in Australia, they're in London. Who will provide the logistics for them to come? If you say it is compulsory, probably you will deny them a renewal of their passport. So how would they get to my village? How would they get to Orokoto to come and vote? Who provides the logistics, Mr. Speaker?
We are trying to put something on nothing. It is not the problem mandating citizens to vote. There is no problem making it compulsory for citizens to vote. But a situation where citizens have lost confidence in their vote, it becomes a problem, a very serious problem. And as such, Mr. Speaker, while we are making a law to make voting compulsory, we should also make a law that will make the votes of citizens count. The last election, Mr. Speaker, we can all say without shying from the truth, INEC chairman and all the INEC officers went around the country carrying out campaigns that their vote will count, giving all sorts of promises, and at the end, we saw something else. So while we are support the mandatory voting,
Mr. Speaker.
let us do the difference.
Now, what you did not hear in that back and forth is that this out-of-touch bill proposes that an eligible voter who fails to vote without a valid reason would face a penalty, including a fine of 100,000 naira, a 6-month jail term, or both. Yes, you heard right. A 6-month jail term for not voting in a country where many voting centers have become war zones. A country where you could go to your voting center as a full-bodied human being and return as a disabled human being. And by the way, who decides a valid reason for not voting? The police, the courts, or members of this National Assembly? Now notice they kept referring to Australia as a model. But here is what happens in Australia. If you do not vote at a state election or referendum, you may receive an email, text message, or notice in the mail seeking an explanation of your apparent failure to vote. Please respond to the electronic message or complete the form and return it in the envelope provided. Electors who fail to vote at a state election and do not provide a valid and sufficient reason for such failure will be fined. The penalty for the first offenders is $50, and this increases to $75 if you previously paid a penalty or been convicted of this offense. If you do not have a valid and sufficient reason for not voting, you can pay the penalty and that will be the end of the matter. So Australia, a country we seem to be modeling this bill after, with all its richness and greatness, hasn't included a jail term in its own laws. But because our lawmakers and governments love Nigerians so much, they decided to add the jail part as a demonstration of their love and commitment to the democratic process. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everything about this bill is wrong. I fully understand the rationale behind it, which is to essentially encourage turnout during elections. Because let's face it, turnouts during elections in Nigeria are generally poor. I think the 2023 elections had a 25% turnout. So I get it. But the idea that a group of people will compel the rest of us into voting for the reasons they have outlined here is just simply ludicrous. As a matter of fact, there shouldn't be any reason why anyone should be forced into voting. No reason whatsoever. And the reason is simple. Voting is a civic responsibility. Therefore, no organ of government should make it mandatory under any guise. The best the government can do is to sensitize the people on voter education. Honestly, you can't help but wonder whether any quality thoughts and research went into this bill. Because if there were any, this kind of bill shouldn't have scaled first and second reading. So rather than waste precious time on this bill, this is what I think the lawmakers should be focusing their energy on. Number one, perhaps the biggest reason why Nigerians don't turn out to vote is because most people think their vote will not count. They feel the system is rigged against them. And there are plenty of examples one can point to in this regard. Or isn't it in the same Nigeria that one election result is announced at the polling station and another announced at the collation center? Truth is, if people trust that their vote will count, they will naturally come out in their numbers to vote. And as we saw during the 2023 elections, the voting experience can actually be fun for many Nigerians.
LUP 75 78 79
So rather than criminalizing failure to vote, the lawmakers should rather be focusing their energy on fixing the trust problem. And as I've hinted earlier, our elections in Nigeria have progressively been militarized. And of course, violent prone because of desperate politicians. Truth is, no sane individual will be confident about the danger that our election centers have become. Another inescapable reason why Nigerians are not just interested in voting is because of the dubious nature of many of our politicians. As they say in the US, many of our politicians campaign in poetry but govern in prose. In other words, they promise so much but then deliver very little. It is oftentimes their inability to honor their own electoral promises that drives the electorate away from the polling booths. And how can they not remember that insecurity and poverty continue to rise in many parts of Nigeria? And this is something they themselves have admitted to on numerous occasions.
The most hated person in the world is the person that speaks the truth. And people will not want to listen to the truth because they do not want their illusion destroyed. Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, I think enough is enough. We need to address the main issue now. Where are we? The role of government in governance is to protect lives and property of the people and to provide welfare for the people. Mr. Speaker, we have failed woefully in all this. My other colleague there, Sununu, said over 70 people were killed. My dear colleague from Oyo State said over 50 people were killed. Somebody from Imo said their people are being killed. Go to the northeast, north central, northwest, southeast, southwest, south. Our people are being killed. What are we doing in government? It is important we address this, Mr. Speaker. Is it the time when we have fighter jets moving here and there that we will address this issue? Something has to be done, Mr. Speaker.
So is it in this same environment and condition you expect your constituents to go and vote? Constituents who oftentimes don't even know where their next meal will be coming from. If this is not a joke, I wonder what is. Another reason why Nigeria may never witness this large voter turnout that these lawmakers are talking about is because electors are not just confident that their elected representatives are interested in solving their problems. And for someone like me, one of the biggest problems that I have against the Nigerian politicians is that majority of them are just too tone deaf for my liking. And maybe the greatest danger of this bill is that people can just go to their polling booth and decide to do something crazy. Now imagine for a second if this bill becomes law. Chances are that a lot of people will just go to the polling booth and randomly vote just anyone. Like voting for the finest candidate on the ballot paper, or the candidate with the finest appearance, or a candidate that looks like them, or a candidate that aligns with their ethnic and religious beliefs. Nothing based on merit and accomplishments. Just something crazy in a bid to avoid a fine and a jail time. And the implication of that, of course, is that we might be electing individuals with absolutely no business being in government. And I can go on and on and on. And by the way, shouldn't we now be overly concerned about the quality of thinking in this place? Especially when you learn that one of the sponsors of the bill is the Speaker of the House of Reps, who I must add is a PhD holder. I mean, how can scholars like the Speaker of the House of Reps come up with a bill that is clearly lacking in depth and in substance? Just how?